Imagine an alien anthropologist lands on Earth tomorrow.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Right. And the very first place they visit is a modern commercial gym.
Hmm.
Like, what do you think they would actually observe?
Oh, man. They would probably be completely baffled.
Exactly. I mean, they would see rows of humans running to the point of absolute exhaustion on these uh, motorized rubber belts that literally go nowhere.
Yeah, just expending all this precious energy for zero practical output.
Right. And then they would see people picking up these incredibly heavy, arbitrary pieces of metal, grunting, sweating, and then just putting them right back down in the exact same spot.
From a purely objective, survival-oriented standpoint, it looks completely absurd. I mean, it looks like a glitch in the programming of our species.
A massive glitch.
Because why would any organism voluntarily do that? You aren't escaping a predator on that treadmill. And you certainly aren't bringing home dinner with those dumbbells.
It's like we've constructed these bizarre mirrored torture chambers just to simulate the physical struggle that used to be a mandatory, built-in part of everyday human life.
Yeah, that is a great way to put it.
And that strange contradiction between the sterile, sedentary lives we actually live and the dynamic, demanding bodies we inhabit is exactly what we are unpacking for you today.
It is such a massive phenomenon to look into.
It really is. We are looking at a conversation from the Diary of a CEO featuring Harvard professor Dr. Daniel E. Lieberman, and this interview completely exploded. I mean, it racked up over 13.4 million views.
Which is just a staggering number for a health and science discussion.
Right, and the promise of the video is to deconstruct the biggest lies we are told about exercise, sleep, running, cancer, and sugar.
And Dr. Lieberman's background is really the lens through which this entire paradigm shift makes sense.
Yeah, because he isn't just some guy on the internet, right?
Exactly. He isn't a fitness influencer selling a 30-day shred program, and he isn't a biohacker pushing a proprietary supplement. He's a world-renowned paleoanthropologist.
Right, an expert on the evolution of human physical activity.
He literally spends his life studying indigenous populations and the fossil record. He wrote the book Exercised. And his work treats the human body not as a static machine to be hacked, but as a biological history book.
A history book shaped over millions of years of rigorous evolution.
Precisely.
So our goal here today isn't to give you a new workout split or dictate how many grams of carbohydrates you're allowed to eat today.
No, definitely not.
We are mapping out a completely different way to view your own biology. We are tracking a journey from the campfires of ancient hunter-gatherer tribes all the way to the ergonomic chairs of your modern corporate office.
It is a wild journey to take.
Okay, let's unpack this. We need to figure out why so many of the health rules we've been handed feel so incredibly difficult to follow. Let's start right at the foundation of Lieberman's work.
The hunter-gatherer baseline.
Exactly. Because if you want to know what is going wrong with modern human health, don't you first have to understand what the factory settings of a human being actually look like?
You do. You absolutely have to start there. And that is where the concept of evolutionary mismatch becomes the skeleton key for understanding our modern health crisis.
Evolutionary mismatch. I love that term.
Right. Because for roughly 99% of human history, our species existed as hunter-gatherers.
99%. That's almost the entirety of our existence.
Yeah, it is. The modern world, the reality you inhabit right now with drive-thrust desk jobs, paved roads, and, climate-controlled living rooms is a completely novel experiment.
It's an evolutionary blink of an eye.
Exactly. So when Lieberman studies modern hunter-gatherer societies like the Hadza in Tanzania, he isn't just looking at a different culture.
What is he looking at then?
He is effectively observing the environmental conditions and physical demands that our bodies were naturally selected to endure.
Which raises the million-dollar question, right? Do those hunter-gatherers get the same diseases as you and I?
And that is where the data gets really interesting.
Because when you hear about heart disease or type 2 diabetes or osteoporosis, they're almost always framed as the inevitable tragedies of aging.
Right, like it's just the cost of doing business as a human.
Exactly. The narrative is that you just get older, your biological warranty expires, and the machine breaks down.
But the anthropological data severely challenges that narrative. I mean, it tears it apart.
Oh, wow. Really?
Yeah. Hunter-gatherers certainly suffer from infectious diseases, accidents, and high infant mortality. Life in the wild is incredibly dangerous.
Sure. They aren't immortal.
Right. but they rarely suffer from the chronic, non-communicable diseases that are totally overwhelming our modern healthcare systems today.
Wait, so they aren't getting type 2 diabetes?
No. They don't typically develop type 2 diabetes or coronary artery disease. Asking whether hunter-gatherers suffer from these ailments forces us to recategorize our own sicknesses.
How so?
Well, it means these aren't inevitabilities of human biology. They are environmental mismatches.
Oh, I see. So if a species is perfectly adapted to one specific environment and you suddenly drop it into a radically different environment, things start to malfunction.
Exactly. It's like taking a polar bear and putting it in the middle of the Sahara Desert.
That is a great analogy. A polar bear in the desert is going to suffer from extreme hypothermia, starvation, and just massive distress.
Absolutely. But you wouldn't look at the sick polar bear and blame its genetics, right?
Right. You wouldn't say the polar bear is inherently broken. You would blame the desert.
We are the polar bears in the desert.
That is profound. But wait, if we're completely mismatched to our environment, how does that explain our behavior?
What do you mean?
Because nowhere is that mismatch more glaring than how we view the concept of laziness. Think about the moral weight you attach to not wanting to go to the gym.
Oh, the guilt is massive.
Right. You call yourself lazy, you call yourself unmotivated, you feel immense guilt sitting on the couch watching television instead of going for a run.
Society heavily reinforces that guilt, too.
But if I look at my smartphone and the battery dips below 20%, the phone automatically dims the screen. It shuts down background apps. It goes into low power mode to conserve energy.
That is its default setting.
Yeah. And I don't call my phone lazy. I don't shame my phone for lacking discipline. So is our biological desire to sit on the couch just our factory settings trying to conserve battery life?
What's fascinating here is that the biological imperative to conserve energy is one of the strongest survival mechanisms you possess.
Really? So
Huh?
being lazy kept us alive?
Yes. In a hunter-gatherer environment, calories were incredibly scarce, and the physical cost of acquiring those calories was immensely high.
You had to work for every single bite of food.
Exactly. You had to track animals, dig for tubers, walk miles to find water. You never knew with certainty when your next meal was coming.
So wasting energy was basically a death sentence.
Completely. In that environment, expending energy unnecessarily, say, running 5 miles just for the fun of it, or lifting heavy rocks for an hour for no practical reason, wasn't just pointless.
It was dangerous.
It was actively dangerous. It was a massive evolutionary disadvantage. The humans who survived, thrived, and passed on their genes to you were the ones who were ruthlessly efficient with their energy.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second.
Go for it.
If resting is an elite survival skill, and my body wants to conserve energy, why does sitting on the couch all day make me feel lethargic, stiff, and physically awful?
That is the paradox of modern life.
Right. Meanwhile, if I force myself to go to the gym and work out, I actually feel energized and clear-headed afterward. It seems like a total contradiction. If my body wants to be lazy, shouldn't laziness feel amazing?
You have to separate the short-term biological drive from the long-term physiological requirement.
Okay, break that down for me.
Yes. Your brain's immediate short-term drive is to conserve energy whenever possible because it assumes you're always on the brink of starvation. That is the programming.
The battery saver mode.
Exactly. But your physiology, your cardiovascular system, your lymphatic system, your musculoskeletal system evolved under the condition of constant required movement.
So the body needs movement to function, but the brain is trying to stop you from moving to save calories.
Precisely. Your body expects a certain threshold of physical mechanical stress just to maintain its baseline functions.
Wow. So the body's expecting me to move to survive, but hoping I don't move more than I have to.
That is exactly it. And this is where the neurochemistry comes in. When you do exercise, your body releases endorphins, dopamine, and endocannabinoids.
Which is what we usually call the runner's high.
Right. Evolution designed that chemical reward system to act as a painkiller and a motivator. It was there so that ancient humans could push through the exhaustion of a grueling hunt or a long migration.
It was a survival mechanism to help you tolerate the mandatory physical labor of staying alive.
Yes. Today, you have to artificially trigger that survival chemistry in a gym because your environment no longer demands the labor.
That makes so much sense. You feel awful sitting on the couch because your physiological systems are literally stagnating.
Blood flow slows down, insulin sensitivity drops, muscles begin to atrophy. All of that is happening even while your short-term survival brain is congratulating you on saving calories.
The brain is completely disconnected from the reality of the environment. It doesn't realize there's a fully stocked refrigerator 10 feet away in the kitchen.
No, it has no idea. It thinks every calorie saved is a victory against starvation.
And that reframing is vital for anyone listening to this. Shifting from the idea of laziness as a sin to laziness as an evolutionary survival tactic removes this profound psychological burden.
It relieves so much pressure. You aren't broken. Your reluctance to exercise is not a character flaw.
No, you are a highly evolved, perfectly adapted organism reacting entirely normally to a deeply abnormal environment.
Exactly.
So if we accept that our biological default is to conserve energy, and we live in a society that rarely forces us to expend it naturally, that explains why we had to invent such complicated rules.
Oh, the rules are endless.
They really are. Rigid, often completely contradictory rules to force ourselves to move. And this brings us right into the heart of Lieberman's deconstruction of modern health myths.
The lies of modern health.
Yes, because we are surrounded by these absolute black and white rules. You read an article that says, running will destroy your knees, so you stop running.
And then you read that not doing cardio is destroying your heart.
Exactly. Or you're told sugar is literal poison, so you cut out every single carbohydrate only to crash and binge a week later. Wait, why do we fall for these lies so easily?
The fitness and diet industries thrive on absolutism because absolutism is incredibly easy to market.
Oh, that makes total sense. Give people a villain.
Exactly. The human brain craves certainty, especially when we are feeling overwhelmed or anxious about our health. Providing a clear villain like running or sugar or lack of sleep and a simple binary solution is highly profitable.
But human biology does not operate in binaries.
No, it operates in the complex gray area of context, dose, and evolutionary adaptation.
Well, let's tackle running first, because the idea that running destroys your joints is treated as absolute gospel in so many circles.
It really is. People are terrified of running.
You constantly hear people say, well, humans weren't meant to run on hard surfaces. It grinds your cartilage down to nothing. But if we evolved to hunt and gather, wouldn't we be perfectly adapted to run?
You would think so, logically.
Right. So how does the running ruins your knees myth survive if it goes completely against our evolutionary history?
It survives because people fundamentally misunderstand the mechanics of human cartilage and the impact of modern footwear.
Okay, explain the cartilage part.
Cartilage is not like the brake pads on a car. A brake pad is dead material. Every time you use it, it wears down a little bit more until it's just gone.
That is definitely how people picture their knees, just wearing out over time.
Right. But biological tissue is living, dynamic, and highly responsive to stress. Cartilage actually does not have a direct blood supply.
Wait, really? How does it get nutrients then?
It relies on a process called cyclical compression to stay healthy.
Cyclical compression, like squeezing a sponge.
That is the exact mechanism. When you apply weight to the joint, it squeezes the waste products out of the cartilage.
Okay.
And then when you lift the weight off, the cartilage expands and sucks in fresh synovial fluid, which contains oxygen and nutrients.
Oh, wow. So if you don't load the joint, like if you just sit at a desk all day, the cartilage doesn't get squeezed.
It literally starves. Studies repeatedly show that recreational runners actually have lower rates of knee osteoarthritis than completely sedentary individuals. The running is feeding the joint.
That is incredible. The running actually feeds the joint. But wait, if running feeds the joint, why do so many modern runners get injured?
That is the big question.
Yeah, I mean, why is sports medicine a multi-billion-dollar industry if running is so natural for us?
That comes back to the environmental mismatch we talked about. It isn't that we run, it is how we run.
What do you mean by how we run?
Our ancestors ran barefoot, or they ran in very minimal footwear. When you run barefoot, it is agonizingly painful to land heavily on your heel.
Right, there's no padding there.
Exactly. So your body naturally adjusts your stride to land softly on the midfoot or forefoot. This allows the muscles and tendons of the foot and calf to act as natural shock absorbers.
But modern running shoes have massive, thick, cushioned heels.
Exactly. Modern shoes artificially dampen the sensory feedback from the ground. They allow you to overstride and slam your heel into the pavement with immense force without feeling the immediate pain.
But the force has to go somewhere, right?
Yes. The shoe absorbs some of the shock, but the rest of the impact force travels straight up the skeletal system into the knee and hip joints.
So the injury isn't caused by the act of running itself.
No, it's caused by a biomechanical mismatch introduced by modern technology.
So the lie isn't just false, it's the exact opposite of the truth. We are blaming the physical activity for the damage caused by the modern shoe.
That is exactly what is happening.
Man, that is wild. Let's pivot to the next massive lie. Sugar.
Oh, this is a big one.
The current cultural narrative is that sugar is a toxin. It is the root cause of the obesity epidemic, diabetes, and inflammation.
It is entirely demonized.
Right. Is there any evolutionary truth to the idea that sugar is poison? Because clearly, consuming massive amounts of refined, high fructose corn syrup isn't doing us any favors.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, calling sugar a poison is a profound biological misunderstanding. Glucose, which is a simple sugar, is the primary preferred fuel source for the human body.
Wait, preferred.
Yes, your brain alone consumes about 20% of your total daily energy, and it relies almost exclusively on glucose to function. Without sugar, you die.
So hunter-gatherers weren't avoiding it.
Not at all. Hunter-gatherers actively sought out sugar. They prized honey, they ate wild fruits whenever they could find them. From an evolutionary perspective, sugar is an incredibly dense, valuable source of rapid energy.
I have to stop you there, though. If sugar is the preferred fuel source, and our brains literally need it to survive, why is it causing such an apocalyptic health crisis today? You can't argue that drinking a 2-liter bottle of soda is biologically equivalent to a hunter-gatherer eating a wild berry.
I'm not arguing that at all. The poison isn't the molecule itself. The poison is the delivery system and the dose.
The delivery system. Okay, explain that.
When a hunter-gatherer ate a piece of fruit, they were getting fructose, yes, but that fructose was locked inside a dense matrix of dietary fiber, water, and micronutrients.
And that fiber changes how the body processes the sugar.
Completely. The human digestive system has to work hard to break down that physical fiber to access the sugar inside.
So it slows it down.
Yes. This results in a slow, steady release of glucose into the bloodstream. The pancreas responds by releasing a moderate, manageable amount of insulin to shuttle that glucose into the cells. The system remains in balance.
So what happens when I drink a can of soda or eat a heavily processed pastry?
You have removed the fiber, you have removed the water, you have extracted the sugar and concentrated it.
That there's no buffer.
None! When you consume refined sugar, there is no physical barrier to slow down digestion. The glucose floods into your bloodstream like a tsunami.
And the body panics.
Basically, to prevent toxic levels of blood sugar, your pancreas has to frantically pump out massive amounts of insulin. This huge spike in insulin rapidly drops your blood sugar.
Which leads to the inevitable energy crash.
Exactly, which then triggers your brain to crave more sugar to fix the crash. You become trapped in a metabolic roller coaster.
That sounds exhausting for the body.
It is. Over time, your cells become resistant to that constant flood of insulin, which is the underlying mechanism behind type 2 diabetes.
So the villain isn't the carbohydrate itself. The villain is the industrial processing that strips away the evolutionary context, the fiber that our bodies evolved to expect alongside the carbohydrate.
That is the crucial distinction right there.
We are taking a natural fuel and refining it into a biological weapon.
When the diet industry tells you to just cut out all sugar, they are flattening the nuance. They're lumping wild blueberries in with processed candy bars.
Which creates so much anxiety.
It creates orthorexia, anxiety, and completely unsustainable eating habits.
This theme of flattening nuance brings us to one of the most provocative ideas in the discussion: the muscle paradox.
Yes, the chapter on whether too much muscle is bad.
If you look at modern fitness culture, the goal is always more. More hypertrophy, bigger gains, massive protein intake. We are a culture obsessed with building as much muscle mass as humanly possible.
It is the ultimate contradiction of modern fitness.
But Lieberman questions if there is an upper limit to the usefulness of muscle.
Right. Today, huge, bulging muscles are treated as the ultimate visual signifier of health and discipline. But from a strict evolutionary standpoint, muscle is incredibly expensive tissue.
Expensive in terms of metabolic cost.
Highly expensive. Muscle tissue is metabolically active. It requires a significant, constant supply of calories just to maintain itself, even when you are just sitting still doing absolutely nothing.
So your baseline calorie burn just goes up.
Yes. Your basal metabolic rate, the calories you burn just to keep the lights on, goes up significantly the more muscle you carry.
Let me see if I'm tracking this. If muscle requires constant caloric upkeep, then building massive biceps isn't just biologically expensive.
Where are you going with this?
Well, in a hunter-gatherer context where food is scarce and famines are frequent, having an extra 30 pounds of pure aesthetic muscle is literally a starvation risk.
Yes.
Your body is constantly having to feed that tissue.
Yeah. Your deduction is spot on. The body operates as a ruthless metabolic accountant. It does not care about how you look in the swimsuit. It only cares about keeping you alive until tomorrow.
That is wild. So it views excess muscle as a threat.
It views excess muscle the way a struggling business views a massive, unnecessary overhead expense. You only evolved to build and maintain the exact amount of muscle necessary to perform the tasks of daily survival.
Like carrying water or processing food.
Exactly. Walking long distances, carrying children, anything beyond that functional requirement was a dangerous liability.
That explains so much. When you go to the gym and struggle to put on muscle, your body isn't failing you. It's actually fighting you.
It is actively resisting you.
It's saying, are you absolutely sure you want to open this massive new metabolic expense account?
Yeah.
Because I am not convinced we have a stable enough food supply to fund it.
Yes, your physiology actively resists extreme hypertrophy because it evolved in a world of scarcity.
Which brings us back to the danger of isolated fitness myths.
Right. When you hyper-focus on a single variable like maximizing muscle mass at all costs, or entirely demonizing sugar or refusing to run, you lose sight of the holistic reality of how the human system evolved to function.
Because a hunter-gatherer didn't track macronutrients.
No, they didn't do isolated bicep curls on a preacher bench to target specific muscle fibers. They moved as a complete integrated system interacting with a complex environment.
Okay, so if the absolutist rules are missing the point, how are we supposed to move?
That is the practical question.
Right. If isolating muscle groups in mirrored rooms is an evolutionary mismatch, what does functional movement actually look like? This brings us to the mechanics of real-world movement.
Yes, let's get into the mechanics.
And the most glaring difference between modern fitness and our evolutionary blueprint is the concept of the binge workout.
The binge workout is a fascinating byproduct of modern scheduling.
Think about the standard white-collar worker. You sit in your car for an hour commute. You sit at a desk for 9 hours staring at a screen.
Then you sit in the car on the way home.
Exactly. Then, burdened by the guilt of your sedentary day, you go to a gym and absolutely annihilate yourself in a high-intensity spin class or a brutal boot camp for 45 minutes.
It's stationary for 95% of the day and pure adrenaline panic for 5%.
Right. And while that 45 minutes of intense activity is certainly better than nothing, it places a very jarring, unnatural rhythm on the autonomic nervous system.
The evolutionary baseline wasn't sitting completely immobile, followed by a simulated near-death experience.
What was the baseline then?
The baseline was constant low-level motion. Walking, squatting, carrying, foraging. It was a steady hum of physical engagement, a slow burn of energy throughout the day, punctuated by brief moments of intensity.
It feels like the binge workout is just our attempt to compress an entire day's worth of natural movement into a highly efficient 45-minute pill.
That is a great way to look at it.
But the body doesn't process it the same way, does it? Because I look at how we actually perform these binge workouts, and it brings me to a specific point about strength training.
The equipment we use.
Yes. If you go into any commercial gym, look at the equipment. Leg press machines, seated chest presses, lying hamstring curls. We have literally invented a way to exercise while sitting down.
We have managed to make physical exertion ergonomic and sedentary.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting. Doing a leg press while sitting in a stabilized padded machine feels like practicing a foreign language on an app in your living room.
Ooh, I like that analogy.
It's safe, you're isolating specific vocabulary, and you don't have to worry about the unpredictable real world. But doing strength training on your feet?
Like a heavy farmer's carry or picking a sandbag up off the floor?
Exactly. Or doing a free weight squat. That's like being dropped into the middle of a bustling market in a foreign country. You can't just rely on rote memorization. You have to balance, adapt, and use your whole system.
That analogy perfectly captures the difference between isolated muscle contraction and neurological integration.
Neurological integration. Okay, unpack that.
When you sit in a leg press machine, the steel frame is providing all the structural stability. Your brain doesn't have to balance your body. It only has to send a crude signal to the quadriceps to push the sled away.
So you're tuning off parts of your body.
You are disengaging the core, the stabilizers in the hips, the proprioceptors in the ankles.
So when I'm on my feet lifting something heavy.
When you are on your feet, gravity is acting on your entire skeletal structure. Your central nervous system is firing constantly, communicating with thousands of sensory receptors.
It's doing a lot more work.
It is making continuous micro adjustments in your feet, firing the multifidus muscles along your spine, engaging your transversus abdominis to protect your organs. Your brain is mapping your body in three-dimensional space.
This is how humans evolved to exert force.
Exactly. We didn't push heavy objects while strapped into supportive chairs. We lifted, pushed, pulled, and carried while rooted to the earth, managing our shifting center of gravity.
So the best exercise isn't about finding the one machine that burns the maximum number of calories per minute. The obsession with optimal calorie burn is entirely the wrong metric.
It is a modern neurosis.
Yeah.
If you look at the holistic health of the indigenous population's Lieberman studies, they aren't achieving cardiovascular health through heart rate monitored high-intensity interval training.
Right. They aren't wearing smartwatches?
No, they are achieving it through a lifestyle where movement is the inescapable medium of their existence. The movement recruits the whole body, navigates physical space, and most importantly, it is sustainable over the long term without causing mechanical breakdown.
But this brings us to a massive structural problem. A really dark realization, actually.
Which is?
If movement is supposed to be the inescapable medium of our existence, what happens when stillness becomes the inescapable medium?
Ah, right.
Because understanding how to do a perfect neurologically integrated barbell squat is great, but tomorrow morning, I still have to wake up and go sit at my desk for 9 hours because that is how I participate in the economy.
The modern reality.
Yeah. Knowing how to lift heavy things on my feet doesn't change the fact that my environment demands that I remain stationary to survive financially.
And that is exactly where this conversation shifts from being an interesting anthropological thought experiment into an urgent systemic public health critique.
It's the tension between the individual and the system.
You are hitting on the tension between what an individual can control and what the system enforces.
Let's talk about that tension regarding genetics versus lifestyle. We constantly hear people talk about their health outcomes as if they're entirely pre-written in their DNA.
Right, you hear that a lot.
People say, well, heart disease runs in my family, or I just have bad genetics for weight gain. If my environment is forcing me to be sedentary and my genetics are bad, am I just doomed? How much of our health fate is actually locked in?
This is where we need to introduce the mechanism of epigenetics. The scientific consensus, heavily supported by evolutionary biology, is often summarized by the phrase, genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger.
Genetics load the gun, but lifestyle pulls the trigger. What does that actually mean at a biological level? If I have the gene for something, isn't the gun already firing?
Not at all. Think of your DNA less like a rigid architectural blueprint and more like a massive
A
switchboard.
switchboard, okay.
You may have inherited certain genetic predispositions from your ancestors, perhaps a variant of the ApoE gene that increases the risk of Alzheimer's, or genes that make you more susceptible to insulin resistance.
Okay, so the potential is there.
Yes. However, those genes have to be expressed or turned on. Epigenetics is the study of how your environment and behaviors cause chemical modifications, like methylation, that literally turn certain genes on or off.
So my ancestors might have passed down the genetic code for type 2 diabetes, but because they lived as active hunter-gatherers, they never encountered the specific environmental triggers required to flip the switch.
Exactly. Their environment kept those genetic predispositions dormant.
The constant movement, their whole food diets, their strong social cohesion.
Right. Their lack of chronic psychological stress. The gun was loaded, but it stayed firmly in the holster.
Wow.
Today, you possess the exact same genome, but you are swimming in an environment of refined sugars, chronic sleep deprivation, and profound physical stagnation. The modern environment is pulling the trigger on millions of loaded genetic guns every single day.
That is terrifying.
It is a massive public health crisis.
This raises an important question. If we know the environment is pulling the trigger, and we have the data linking these lifestyle mismatches to devastating outcomes like cancer, heart disease, and metabolic syndrome, why is our medical system operating the way it does?
That is the million-dollar question.
We have a healthcare infrastructure built almost entirely around waiting for the evolutionary mismatch to finally break our bodies, and then trying to manage the damage.
You are describing the fundamental flaw of treating mismatched diseases with a purely pharmacological approach.
Right.
Modern medicine is genuinely miraculous when it comes to treating acute trauma or infectious disease. If you are in a car accident or contract a bacterial infection, the interventions available today are astounding.
Absolutely. It saves lives daily.
But the vast majority of our medical resources are currently poured into the symptom management of chronic, non-communicable diseases, what we call diseases of civilization.
It's the classic cliff edge analogy.
Oh, I know this one.
Our society is built on a massive, dangerous cliff. People keep walking off the edge, falling and shattering their legs. And instead of building a sturdy fence at the top of the cliff to prevent people from falling in the first place, we invest trillions of dollars into parking a fleet of highly advanced, incredibly expensive ambulances at the very bottom.
It's perfectly put.
We are amazing at putting the shattered bones back together, and we have incredible painkillers to mask the agony of the broken legs, but we absolutely refuse to build the fence.
That analogy is painfully accurate. We are treating the downstream effects of a toxic environment.
Give me an example of that in practice.
Well, when someone develops hypertension due to a sedentary lifestyle and a poor diet, we prescribe a blood pressure medication.
Right, which lowers the pressure.
The medication artificially forces the blood vessels to dilate, lowering the pressure. It manages the symptom, but it does absolutely nothing to address the underlying metabolic dysfunction, the lack of cardiovascular conditioning, or the environmental factors that cause the high blood pressure in the first place.
It just masks the mismatch.
Exactly. You cannot medicate your way out of a lifestyle that is fundamentally incompatible with your biology.
But let's be deeply honest here. Taking a pill is so much easier.
It is infinitely easier.
Taking a statin every morning is infinitely easier than restructuring your entire life to mimic a hunter-gatherer's activity levels while still holding down a modern job. Individual willpower is ultimately going to fail against the crushing weight of a sedentary culture.
It always does.
So if the medical system is entirely reactive and individual willpower isn't enough, what is the solution? Are we talking about a total redesign of the world we live in?
Yes. The only sustainable solution to a systemic environmental mismatch is systemic environmental redesign.
Okay, this is where the conversation becomes deeply controversial.
Because of the corporate mandates chapter.
Exactly. How much should society or employers intervene in the physical health of individuals? That immediately sets off my internal alarms.
I completely understand why.
Because on one hand, I agree with the logic. If our environment is making us sick, and our jobs are the primary reason we are sedentary, then maybe our employers bear some responsibility.
Right, they're part of the environment.
But the idea of corporate mandates around exercise, like a boss forcing employees to hit a certain step count or do jumping jacks in the break room, feels incredibly dystopian. We value bodily autonomy.
Is the solution really corporate mandated burpees?
It's a provocative tension between individual liberty and public health. But mandating exercise is still operating under the wrong paradigm.
Why is that the wrong paradigm?
Because it is still treating movement as a separate forced activity. If we want to redesign society, we have to look at environmental architecture. You don't need to mandate exercise if movement is naturally woven into the fabric of daily life.
Okay, but how do we do that without stripping away the technological advancements we rely on? I don't want to go back to foraging for berries in the woods. We don't have to. It comes down to urban planning and corporate culture. Why are modern cities zoned so that residential areas are miles away from commercial areas, virtually forcing people to rely on cars?
That is a great point. We designed it that way.
Redesigning society means prioritizing walkable, mixed-use neighborhoods and safe cycling infrastructure over massive highways. It means designing office buildings where taking the stairs is visually appealing, centrally located and convenient, while the elevators are tucked away.
Making the healthy choice the easy choice.
Yes. It means cultivating a professional culture where taking a 30-minute walking meeting isn't viewed as slacking off, but as an optimized, standard business practice.
Right now, society is perfectly engineered to minimize human movement at every possible turn. We have engineered all the physical friction out of life.
Every single bit of it.
You can order your groceries from your couch, work from your couch, socialize through a screen from your couch. We have completely optimized for stillness. And to fight against that optimization requires a terrifying amount of daily conscious willpower.
And willpower is a finite, rapidly depleting resource.
Oh, absolutely.
In psychology, there is a concept called ego depletion. Every time you have to force yourself to do something uncomfortable, like going to the gym after a grueling day of decision-making at work, you are draining your cognitive reserves.
Eventually, the reserves run dry.
Yes. And your biological default to conserve energy takes over, which leads beautifully into the most vital takeaway from this entire exploration, the absolute necessity of compassion.
Compassion over guilt. Because if we take everything we've discussed today, the fact that your biological default is to conserve energy, the fact that modern infrastructure is heavily designed to keep you seated.
The fact that the fitness industry attacks you with confusing, absolutist myths.
Yes, and the fact that your willpower is finite. The only logical response to someone struggling to stay active is profound compassion.
Guilt is a terrible long-term motivator.
Yeah.
If you view your reluctance to exercise as a moral failure, if you think you are just weak or lazy, you will eventually resent the process and give up.
It's just a cycle of shame.
But if you view your struggle through Lieberman's evolutionary lens, you realize the magnitude of what you are up against. You are fighting millions of years of evolutionary programming that is trying to protect you from starvation, combined with a multi-trillion-dollar modern infrastructure designed to sell you convenience and keep you stationary.
Of course it is incredibly hard.
It's nearly impossible without a shift in perspective.
Acknowledging that difficulty seems like the actual starting point for behavioral change.
Uh,
When you remove the shame, you can stop fighting your own biology and start figuring out how to subtly manipulate your environment.
exactly.
You can look for ways to make movement just a little bit easier, a little bit more natural, and a lot less punishing.
Precisely. Compassion is what allows you to look at your life objectively. It allows you to say, well, my body wasn't designed for this environment. How can I build small, sustainable bridges back to my biology?
So what does this all mean? If we zoom out and look at the vast territory we've covered.
We covered a lot today.
We started with an alien anthropologist staring at a treadmill, trying to understand why we run in place. We dove into Dr. Lieberman's profound premise that we are perfectly adapted to hardware, trying to run totally incompatible modern software.
We explored how our desire to rest isn't laziness, but an ancient survival tactic that is malfunctioning in a world of abundance.
We debunked the absolute lies of the fitness industry. We discovered that running feeds cartilage rather than destroying it, that sugar's danger lies in its refined concentration rather than its mere existence, and that extreme muscle mass is a metabolic liability our bodies actively resist.
We learned that the medical system is parking ambulances at the bottom of the cliff instead of building a fence at the top, basically relying on pills to treat evolutionary mismatches.
And most importantly, we discovered that shame is a biological dead end.
It is a remarkable journey of unlearning everything modern culture has taught us about our bodies.
It really is.
As we wrap up this exploration, I want to leave you with a tangible thought to mull over. Something that bridges the gap between grand evolutionary theory and the reality of your day-to-day.
Okay, let's hear it.
Look around your immediate environment right now. Look at your desk, look at your living room, consider the route you take to work. Are you currently existing in a space designed for the dynamic, capable human you actually evolved to be?
Or are you existing in a space designed for the stationary, compliant human that modern society expects you to be?
Exactly. Once you identify that gap between the environment you inhabit and the environment your biology desperately craves, the question becomes this: what is one tiny, realistic change you could make today to bridge it?
Not a massive New Year's resolution.
No, not a punishing new workout routine driven by guilt, but one small environmental tweak. How can you introduce just a little bit more of your natural habitat back into your daily life?
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the rules, keep listening to your biology, and keep exploring.